everyone, it's Jessica Dybzinski. Thank you so much for coming by my channel today. I am so glad that you're here. So I am going to be working on this double page layout today, and I thought that I would use this fun new stamp of the month for January from Close to My Heart. It's called Frosty Days because I have these cute pictures of my kids playing in the snow. And I did go ahead and kind of get the base part put together. This is from Make It From Your Heart Volume 3. I love this pattern book, and I just cut all the papers according to the sizes that it shows, and I went ahead and adhered those down. And really, I just want to focus on the embellishing part of this. The only other thing that I did is I did edge distress my papers with some coordinating ink colors. But really, I am to the embellishment part. And like I said, I want to use that stamp set. I'm also thinking I might use a couple of different die cuts here. So these are the stitched brackets. I thought maybe I would cut some of these out in some cardstock and use them as a place to build up some of my embellishment clusters. I thought maybe I'd tuck like a smaller size one over here to the side. And then that way, like I said, I would have them as a foundation for my embellishment clusters. Now, I don't know about you, but for me, sometimes the embellishment part of scrapbooking is the most stressful because I sometimes get to this point where I've got all my papers and my photos adhered down. I'm like, oh, now what? And it can be a little hard to make the decision. So one of the things that I do first is decide on a shape that I want to use underneath my embellishment cluster. So I think I'm definitely going to go for that stitched bracket. Another thing that I like to do first or towards the beginning is to stamp out or die cut any of the pieces that I think I might want to use as embellishments. You know, definitely along the way, I think of new things where I change directions and I'll have to stamp something else or die cut something or get out the Cricut. But if I have a basic idea of what I might want to use, I really do like to prepare that first. It helps, in my mind at least, to be able to move them around the page once I've got all of those pieces prepared. And so if you're like me and sometimes you get the papers and the photos down and then you're kind of like, oh, great, now what do I do? Maybe brainstorm what you might want to use for embellishments and spend a little bit of time preparing those first. It works for me, at least in my process. So now that I have stamped some of those Frosty Days images out with my intense black ink, I'm going to take a little bit of time to sit here and color with my tri-blend markers. I really love using these to add color to my stamped images because one marker has 3 different shades of the same color, and I am not an expert colorer by any means, but it makes it pretty foolproof. So for me, this is just a relaxing part where I put on some of my favorite music and I sit and I color just like I used to do when I was a little girl. So you can see here as I'm finishing up this first tree, I'll hold it up for you to see. It just has a really nice blend to it, and you can achieve that with the one single color marker. So I really love that, and especially as the ink dries into the paper, it blends even more. Okay, off camera, I did fussy cut those images out, and I also decided to mat my pages in some of that sapphire blue cardstock. So I'm ready to begin building up these clusters. I took one of those brackets and cut it into 2 pieces, one a little bit smaller than the other. I'm going to tuck that smaller one up here as a place to stamp out my date. And then I've got those fussy cut images, and I'm going to play around with where I will put them on the page. So one of the things that I have learned from watching other people is that it helps in an embellishment cluster to make everything touch at least a little bit. And so definitely once I started doing that, I was much happier with my clusters that I created. And so I would highly recommend doing that. I'm also going to go ahead and stamp out my title here on that bigger bracket because I have a feeling if I start gluing some of these cluster pieces down first, I'm going to not leave myself enough room for that title. So I'll just pull that off real quick. I'm going to stamp out Winter Wonderland. This is from the Seas and Greetings stamp set, which I believe is still available. It has a lot of really cute winter images on it and fun little sayings about snowflakes. So that's perfect for these photos. Okay, so now that I have my title ready to go, I'm going to commit to putting this down. And I am going to put the bracket up a little bit towards the top of that square rather than centered because I think that those trees are going to need to come down just a little bit, and in order to make everything fit, I'm just going to scoot that one up. I'm going to go ahead and commit to putting that other bracket here to the right hand side, and I'm going to start with that right hand cluster. So I'm going to adhere some things down flat, and then I'm going to pop up other pieces up on some thin 3D foam tape. And that's another thing that I really like to do when I'm creating my clusters, is to vary the dimension. So some things go flat, some things I use thin 3D foam tape, and then even other pieces, sometimes I will pull out my regular foam tape so that I have 3 different heights going on the pieces, and making sure to have them all touch each other as well. So let me get this bird put down here. I picked the bird for this particular cluster just because he is looking towards the left, and I want him to look into the layout rather than like off the side of the page. So he's going to go over here, and then I'm going to use my cute little squirrel on the other cluster because he is looking in the opposite direction. So that's another thing I try to pay attention to, is if I have, animals or anything like that, what direction are they facing and what side of the layout should they go on. Okay, like I said, putting that little one up here, that'll be a place to stamp out the date later. And then I'm going to go ahead and start layering the trees on this cluster next to the title. And I want to make a little bit of an L shape with those 2 trees so that they frame in the Wonderland title. And then, like I said, put my squirrel down there. I decided to add just one more tree over to this particular cluster. I thought because this is the one where the title is, it would be okay to have a few additional pieces over there just to give it a little bit more presence on the page. And I really like having that second pine tree tucked in there as well. Okay, I have one tree left over, and I tried really hard to find a place for it on the page, but at that point it kind of felt like the trees and the animals were going to be a little bit random if they were somewhere up towards the top of the page. So this is the point where then I decide to turn to the snowflakes that I have die cut out. A couple of them I'm going to stack together because I really like the way that they look when they are layered on top of each other. And then I'm going to use them to create a couple of other points in my visual triangle. So another thing that I have learned and that has made my life so much easier when it comes to embellishing is to think of a visual triangle. So I've got both pages out in front of me, and so I want that triangle to work not only within one side of a page, but a triangle across both pages. So I've got my 2 little tree and animal clusters, and those will be like the bottom points of my triangle. And then I'm going to start putting some snowflakes up in the top where my date is going to go, and that can be a 3rd point. So you can see a triangle starting to form on each page, but also it's almost like a little zigzag of triangles between the 2 of them. And so that kind of helps me know where to place some of my embellishments, because that was definitely something that I used to struggle with a couple of years ago. Like I said, I get to this point where I'd have all the photos and the papers down, and I'm like, I don't know what to do now. Now I feel like I have a sense of direction because I know about where things should go in order to form those 3 points. So definitely a really good tip that I have picked up along the way. At this point, I am close to being done. I'm going to add a couple more snowflakes in the form of some stamps here. I've got this fun little snowflake stamp from the Frosty Days set, and I'm going to stamp that around my die cut snowflakes. And I will add a couple of more die cut snowflakes to my pages as well. The final thing that I'm going to add to this page is some silver glitter gems, and since I put some of them in the center of my snowflakes, I'm going to make sure to add them to other points of my layout as well. So in the still shots at the end here, you'll be able to see some down by the title and then over by my fun little bird and the trees. So anything that I use in one point of a cluster, I try to use in the other points as well, whether it's a color or a gem or a shape, anything like that, I try to repeat in the different points of my visual triangle. And that's another tip that has helped me in creating my cluster embellishments. So I really hope that you guys have been able to pick up a couple of tips in today's video. I know that I have learned so much from watching others, and I'm hoping to be able to pass that along to you. Thank you so much for being here today. I hope that you have enjoyed watching. As always, happy crafting. Bye guys.